Think about this. I'm standing at the edge of my biggest failure, heart pounding, with just one chance to turn it all around before time runs out. That's where Sasaki Kojiro lives. A samurai who didn't just lose a duel, but turned his greatest defeat into a cosmic revolution that made gods tremble. I'm diving into how his epic clash with Miyamoto Musashi and the sea god's arrogance sparked a truth I can't shake. Failure isn't the end, it's the spark of something divine. Stay with me, because by the end, you'll see why even perfection fears a human who refuses to stay broken.
さすがは宮本武蔵。信じられねえくらい強えな。参った。って言いてえところだが。佐々木よ。心ゆくまでし合おうぞ。ありがたい。
そこから時間にすればわずか数分ほどであったであろう。
このような剣士がおったのか。ここまでか。
Part 1. The Beautiful Failure. How Defeat Became Divine Fear. Most warriors are defined by their victories, their banners flying high above battlefields where they stood triumphant. But when I think of Sasaki Kojiro, I see the embodiment of a truth I've wrestled with my whole life. He carved his legend from something far more profound, a single devastating loss that would echo through eternity. His defeat to Miyamoto Musashi wasn't merely a duel gone wrong, it wasn't just another samurai falling to a superior blade. No, this was the precise moment when failure transformed into something the gods themselves had never witnessed, the birth of infinite potential. The gods, perched on their celestial thrones, had grown accustomed to observing mortals through a lens of predictable patterns. Humans fought, humans died, humans were forgotten. Yet here was Kojiro, defying every expectation they held about mortal limitations, where divine beings existed in static perfection, never growing because they had no need to, never changing because they already embodied the absolute. Sasaki transformed his ultimate failure into something revolutionary, an engine of infinite improvement. The weight of that transformation cannot be understated. In the world of the divine, perfection is both a blessing and a curse. Gods like Poseidon exist in a state of completed excellence, their power absolute, but their growth non-existent. They are finished sculptures in heaven's gallery, beautiful but unchangeable. Sasaki, however, became something entirely different through his defeat. Like Senku Ishigami rebuilding civilization one calculated step at a time, Kojiro rebuilt himself through methodical, obsessive refinement. That relentless self-reconstruction resonates with me deeply. It's the mindset of someone who refuses to let their worst moment be their final one. What the gods witnessed challenged their fundamental understanding of existence itself. Here was a human who didn't crumble under the weight of devastating loss, who didn't retreat into bitterness or despair. Instead, he used that defeat as raw material for transcendence. Each swing of his blade afterward carried not just the technical precision of countless hours of practice, but the accumulated wisdom of 10,000 imagined battles. While gods remained frozen in their perfect forms, Sasaki became something they could never be, eternally evolving. And maybe this is why I find Sasaki's story so haunting, because I've been there too, staring at my own failures and wondering if they could be remade into something worth admiring. This evolution wasn't merely physical or technical, it was philosophical, spiritual, almost cosmic in scope. Kojiro understood something that divine beings in their perfection could not grasp, that true strength emerges not from never falling, but from rising each time with greater understanding. His defeat became his teacher, his humiliation became his foundation, his failure became his most treasured possession. The psychological impact of this realization on the divine realm runs deeper than mere surprise. Gods had always viewed mortals as inherently limited beings, creatures who reach their peak, and then inevitably declined. Yet, Sasaki shattered this assumption completely. His path revealed a truth that would make even gods tremble. Perfection achieved through struggle surpasses perfection granted by birth. When Poseidon finally faced Sasaki in their divine arena, the sea god carried with him ages of unwavering confidence. He had spent millennia believing that divine perfection represented the pinnacle of all existence, that his completed nature made him inherently superior to any mortal challenger. The arrogance wasn't personal, it was structural, built into the very foundation of divine identity. But then came that moment, that precise instant when Sasaki's blade found its mark. The shock that rippled through Poseidon wasn't just physical pain or surprise at being wounded. It was the existential terror of recognizing that everything he believed about the hierarchy of existence had just been proven wrong. Like a character suddenly realizing the story they thought they were living was actually something else entirely. Poseidon faced the devastating truth that his static perfection had been surpassed by human imperfection refined through endless dedication. I imagine that kind of realization feels like having the ground pulled out from beneath you. It's the moment you realize you're not untouchable. This wasn't simply about winning or losing a duel. Sasaki had proved something far more profound and terrifying to divine sensibilities. That the human capacity for growth, when properly channeled through defeat and determination, could eventually surpass even divine stagnation. He demonstrated that being incomplete, being flawed, being capable of failure, these weren't weaknesses to be overcome, but advantages that gods, in their perfect completeness, could never possess. The gods fear Sasaki Kojiro, not because he defeated one of their own, but because he revealed the terrifying truth that their greatest strength, their perfection, might actually be their ultimate limitation. In a cosmos where growth is possible, where transformation through failure can create transcendent power, being unable to change becomes not a mark of superiority, but a form of existential poverty that even gods cannot overcome. Kojiro's victory carried within it the beautiful sadness of a man who had transformed his greatest shame into his most powerful weapon, creating something that challenged the very order of heaven itself. And maybe that's why this story lingers with me so much, because it whispers to anyone who's ever failed that the end might not be the end at all. The implications extend far beyond a single combat. Kojiro's triumph represents a fundamental shift in how we understand strength growth and the relationship between mortal limitation and divine perfection. He proved that endings can become beginnings, that defeats can become victories, and that sometimes the most beautiful achievements emerge not from innate talent or granted power, but from the patient methodical work of turning our failures into stepping stones towards something greater than gods themselves dare to imagine. And if Kojiro's story teaches anything, it's this. Our greatest fear, the fear of failing, might just be the birthplace of our greatest power. Part 2. The Thousand Image Defense, Visualizing the Impossible. What makes Sasaki Kojiro truly terrifying to divine sensibilities isn't merely his swordsmanship, it's the sheer audacity of his mind. His Thousand Image Defense, aka Senju Muso, represents something that should be fundamentally impossible within the natural order. A human consciousness that can simultaneously process infinite possibilities and adapt in real time to threats that exist beyond mortal comprehension. In a way, I imagine what it would be like if every mistake I've ever made, every failure, could be replayed in my mind until I could anticipate and overcome it before it even happened. That's the terrifying beauty Sasaki embodies. When we witness those ghostly afterimages surrounding him during battle, we're not just seeing a technique, we're witnessing the visualization of human potential unleashed from its earthly constraints. The gods have ruled for millennia through the iron law of inevitability. Their power flows from the unshakable certainty that their divine nature makes them predictable victors in any confrontation. They exist as constants in the universe's equation, unchangeable forces that lesser beings must simply accept. But Sasaki's ability to perceive every possible attack, every potential counterattack, every conceivable outcome and variation thereof, transforms him into something that fundamentally breaks divine mathematics. He becomes a human variable that cannot be calculated, predicted, or contained within their cosmic formulas. A wild card thrown into a game the gods believed they had rigged from the very beginning. This extraordinary mental prowess reveals the deeper truth of why the gods genuinely fear humans like Sasaki beyond their public proclamations of humanity's worthlessness. Physical strength, no matter how impressive, can always be overcome with greater strength. Divine speed can be countered with superior divine speed. But in life, just like in Sasaki's battles, there's always something more powerful than force: insight. How do you possibly defeat someone who has already experienced, analyzed, and prepared countermeasures for every conceivable way you might attempt victory? Sasaki's faith in human possibility had transformed him into something that transcended the very concept of defeat. When Poseidon, god of the seas and earthquakes, unleashed his legendary 40-day flood of attacks, believing that pure divine speed and overwhelming might would simply crush any mortal defense through sheer volume and intensity, he discovered something that shook him to his immortal core. Sasaki had already lived through each individual strike thousands upon thousands of times within the theater of his mind. To me, this is the ultimate triumph of preparation over raw power. Every thrust, every feint, every variation and combination had been experienced, dissected, and solved before the god's trident ever moved through the air. The god's supposedly perfect technique, honed over ages of divine existence, crumbled like ancient parchment against the unstoppable force of human imagination made manifest in physical reality. What Poseidon encountered wasn't just superior swordsmanship or lucky timing. He faced the terrifying realization that human consciousness, when pushed beyond its perceived limits, can become something that even gods cannot fully comprehend or counter effectively. This transformation of mental visualization into tangible defensive capability represents something far more profound than mere martial arts mastery. It demonstrates humanity's greatest weapon against divine tyranny, the ability to grow, adapt, and exceed the limitations that even gods consider absolute. Where the gods remain static in their perfection, humans like Sasaki prove that imperfection paired with unlimited potential creates something truly divine in its own right. And perhaps that's the lesson I take most personally, knowing that my own imperfections, the flaws I've often tried to hide or erase, might actually be the source of my strength. Our imperfections aren't flaws to be erased. They are the very cracks through which impossible potential can emerge. Sasaki doesn't just fight for humanity. He fights for the belief that possibility itself is divine. And in that belief, I find hope for my own battles, no matter how impossible they seem.
死にたくねえな。行ってご指南願う。いるわけにはいくまい。我を強くしてくれた先達に申し訳が立たぬ。参る。
Sasaki Kojiroが
3. The Quiet Revolution. Humility as humanity's secret weapon. The arena trembles not with the earthquake force of divine wrath, but with something far more unsettling: the measured footsteps of a man who has transformed every defeat into wisdom. Perhaps most dangerous of all to the gods' carefully constructed worldview is how Sasaki Kojiro carries himself through this ultimate confrontation. Unlike the thunderous defiance that Adam hurled at the heavens or the proud, destructive fury that Lubu unleashed upon his enemies, Sasaki approaches even this battle that will determine humanity's fate with an almost otherworldly calm. He doesn't rage against the cosmic order or proclaim human superiority with tight fists and battle cries. Instead, he simply continues what he's always done throughout his centuries of existence, trying to become a little bit better with each passing moment, each swing of his blade, each breath he takes. This quiet confidence represents something the gods cannot comprehend, cannot categorize, and most importantly, cannot counter with their traditional methods of divine intimidation. Their entire power structure has been built upon a foundation of worship, fear, and the unwavering acknowledgement of their superiority over mortal beings. They need humans to either tremble before their might or rebel against their authority, because both reactions serve the same crucial purpose. They confirm their divine status in the cosmic hierarchy. The trembling proves their power inspires proper terror, while rebellion gives them righteous enemies to crush, further cementing their position as supreme beings. The gods' reliance on this dynamic feels so rigid, so fragile when you think about it. How often do we, too, get trapped in systems that demand we either submit or fight, leaving no room for a third path? But Sasaki offers neither of these expected responses, and this absence creates a void that threatens to swallow their entire understanding of reality. He treats his divine opponent not as a god to be feared with trembling knees or challenged with desperate fury, but simply as the next step in his endless, almost meditative journey of improvement. When Sasaki bows respectfully to Poseidon before their battle begins, the gesture sends ripples of confusion through the divine ranks. He's not showing submission in the way they understand it. This isn't the desperate kneeling of a mortal begging for mercy. Instead, he's demonstrating something far more threatening to their established order. He's showing that humans can face the divine without losing their fundamental humanity, can strive for transcendence without abandoning the humility that defines them, and can achieve victory without needing to diminish or destroy their opponents in the process. I love that moment because it flips the script entirely. It's like Sasaki is saying, I don't need to become you to surpass you. That's a lesson I've struggled to internalize, realizing I don't need to compromise who I am to rise above challenges. This gracious strength makes him not just undefeatable in combat, but completely incomprehensible to beings whose entire existence revolves around ruling through dominance and fear. The gods watch in growing unease as Sasaki moves through the battle with the same quiet determination that has defined his entire existence. Each clash of their weapons becomes a lesson. Each moment of struggle transforms into understanding. Where they expect to see human limitation, they instead witness boundless adaptation. Where they anticipate mortal desperation, they find calm acceptance of whatever outcome may come.
The only one who can beat me is me.
As Amon declares in Kuriko's basketball, but Sasaki has taken this concept and turned it inside out. He has beaten himself so many times, learned from so many failures, that victory becomes not a destination, but a natural consequence of his endless journey toward improvement. Amon's words resonate with me here, because they echo a truth I've come to learn. Real growth comes from wrestling with your own limits, not just external foes. This philosophical approach to combat creates a paradox that strikes at the very heart of divine authority. The gods have always maintained their position by being the final deciders of success and failure, the ultimate judges of what mortals can and cannot achieve. But Sasaki has already judged himself countless times, has already accepted every failure as a teacher rather than a punishment, and has transformed each defeat into a stepping stone toward something greater. In doing so, he has removed himself from their system entirely, creating a space where divine approval or disapproval becomes irrelevant to his growth as both a warrior and a human being. The battle unfolds with a strange beauty that unsettles even the most confident gods. Here is a human who fights not with the desperate fury of a cornered animal or the righteous anger of the oppressed, but with the patient expertise of someone who has spent lifetimes learning how to turn weakness into strength. Every movement carries the weight of countless defeats. Every strategy bears the wisdom of innumerable lessons learned in moments of failure. The gods realize with growing horror that they are not facing a human who dreams of becoming divine, but something far more dangerous. A human who has discovered that humanity itself, when refined and perfected through endless dedication, might be superior to divinity. Sasaki Kojiro represents the one thing the gods truly cannot understand, cannot predict, and cannot defeat through their traditional methods: the uniquely human capacity to find profound meaning and unshakable strength in failure, to grow without any apparent limit or ceiling, and to face the seemingly impossible with quiet determination rather than desperate showmanship. He doesn't save humanity through raw power or righteous rebellion against cosmic injustice, but through something far more radical and threatening to the established order, the simple, terrifying proof that humans are capable of becoming more than even gods imagined possible when they first shaped mortal clay. In a tournament specifically designed to showcase divine superiority once and for all, Sasaki's inevitable victory whispers the most dangerous truth that could ever be spoken: that perhaps the students have finally surpassed their masters, not through rejecting the lessons, but by taking them further than the masters themselves ever dared to dream. His triumph suggests that the age of gods ruling over humans might be drawing to a close, replaced by something entirely new. An era where growth, humility, and endless self-improvement matter more than birthright or divine authority. And maybe that's why Sasaki's story feels so personal to me. It's not just about gods and mortals, it's about all of us. It's about me learning, slowly, that humility isn't weakness. It's strength. It's the weapon I've been carrying all along, even when I didn't realize it.
なんて楽しいんだ。